Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted as ever to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
Yeah, good, apart from the fact that we seem to be delving back into the COVID years, which I'm not a fan of. We do like to make an effort, Daniel. We do like to be in our custom-built studio for the show. But for technical issues, reasons, remote.
out with our control.
Out with our control, yeah.
We're also
banned from our own office.
Fresh from his appearance last week, the one and only Ross Pilcher. Ross, how's it going?
Good, mate. Good to be back. How are you?
It's wonderful to have you back. And Ross is our kind of de facto Hearts expert. I'm going to say expert. I think that's
it's a big word to use. Big word.
I think it's warranted. And we will talk about Hearts a little bit later on.
Yeah, there's been some developments there, interestingly, in the last few hours or 24 hours. So we'll need to explore that with Ross.
Absolutely, we will. We'll come to that all in due time. But before we do that, Keith, we obviously spoke about the game yesterday between Rangers and Celtic at Ibrox. We didn't actually touch on the tifo stuff. That's been causing a lot of headlines today.
Yeah, I mean, I think yesterday we were kind of more talking about the 90 minutes, the football, what it means, etc., etc. But yeah, yet again, after an Old Firm derby, you're having to wade through the aftermath of, banners, protests, tifos, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not sure what Graham Souness is aiming there with that shotgun, but he seems to have fired one right into the foot of the Rangers supporters that put the banner up. There you've got, obviously, a bottle thrown onto the pitch as well. Just ridiculous behaviour. And I don't know how many times Rangers need to warn their own fans. Of course, don't want to get involved in whataboutery. There was similar stuff, missiles thrown. Although the big kind of fuss was the Watergate at the last game at Celtic Park, Scooshgate, whatever you want to call it. But I just find it so tiresome, and maybe that's part of the reason for I don't really enjoy talking about it, Daniel, because it just drags us down. It drags everything down towards the gutter again, and there's so much to be enjoyed about this fixture in terms of football contest and rivalry. Oh, what are you doing there?
I lost my mic. Sorry about that.
But it's almost inevitable that you end up having 2 or 3 days after the fact having to review the behaviour of some people that really should know better. The banner has caused outrage. Rangers were very quick to come out and condemn it. I wonder if there's been a shift in policy. I don't know if that is to do with that's the way Patrick Stewart wants the club run, or if there's a bit of American influence coming into this. But I'm all for it. If Rangers think that the fans have overstepped a line, then they should come out and say so. I think with this one, the problem that the Rangers fans have got with this display is, if you weren't familiar, it's a very iconic photograph that I think it was taken before the World Cup in '82, I think. I think it was 82.
I think you're spot on it. I checked that earlier. I think it is.
Yeah, and it's a real iconic photo. But see if you're not familiar with it, I'm not sure that any of the American owners will have been too familiar with Graham Souness picture taken in 1982.
No.
It just looks like a guy with a shotgun. And, aiming it at the Celtic end, it just looks terrible. And I get that they've tried to be clever because it's Souness and all that, but it's not worked again. And they now seem to be pretty pleased. And we've had many times we had the conversation about what is it with this ultra culture where you kind of feel the need, if the other lot can cause offence, then the other lot will want to cause even greater offence. You had the thing at Celtic Park a few years ago, which was quite rightly condemned, the hanging effigies and all that. That was a shocker. And this isn't too much better, if any. And yet again, it's got to a point where the club is having to come out, Rangers as a club are having to come out and challenge their own supporters and say, this is unacceptable. Look, the banner's one thing, and it was bad taste. See this thrown on bottles, and I think it was thrown in the direction of Celtic's goalkeeper. This is just absolutely criminal behaviour, and it needs to be treated as such. You know, people need to be arrested for this.
Aye.
And they need to be shown a ban in order and not allowed back inside a stadium in Scottish football. If they can't be trusted to watch a game of football with trying to brain somebody with half a bottle of Bucky, then they've got no place. And it depresses me. It worries me a little bit about the direction of travel, you know, as football in this country, because you don't have this same sort of ultra culture across English football. I think you maybe got it at Crystal Palace in the Premier League. That's probably about it. And it seems to be that Scottish football has really plugged into it for whatever reason. And I worry a little bit about the direction of travel. Because, you know, are the other fans or normal fans? I mean, that even... So what we're saying is these guys are bigger fans, better fans. They deserve more of a stage. Well, that's not the case. I find that quite offensive. But the bottom line is they're almost dragging the ball away from the majority because of, I don't know, a sense of entitlement. I don't know, a need to shock, a need to outrage, a need to offend. And you kind of just hope that at some point the grown-ups come back into the room and say, no, this can't be tolerated and it won't be tolerated. And worse than that, it's not just tolerated in Scottish football right now, it's openly encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Celtic might have been first with the Green Brigade. I said many years ago that in many respects, Peter Lawwell had created a bit of a monster there. And once you've created a monster, it needs to be fed. And it starts flexing its muscles. Green Brigade have done that over the years on countless occasions. And now Rangers, they've got it's a different sort of mentality, but that kind of core desire to cause outrage, shock, and offence is just the same. I just think that fixture in general can do without it, and Scottish football on a whole should be, I think, very careful about, you know, whether it embraces further the culture that you know it seems to be. I mean, it is everywhere now. Even St Johnstone have got ultras.
Aye.
With their welly boots and barber jackets and all. So we are, and I get it, the whole match day experience and the colour and the noise, and I get all that. But I kind of remember back in the day before ultras were ever heard of, there was never a problem in Scottish football in terms of atmosphere. It seems to me the vast majority of fans now just leave the noise and the songbook to the ultras. And time after time, these are the same people that drag the club into a situation which is highly regrettable. Mm-hmm. So maybe it might have been a good idea or a healthy idea for it to go back to the way it was when people went to the football. You responded to the atmosphere, or the atmosphere responded to the action, the match. If your team was playing well, it'd be noisy, it'd be up. If your team was playing badly, not so much. The ultra culture, it doesn't seem to matter. Your team could be 4-0 up, 4-0 down. The song sheet remains the same. The singing, dancing remains the same. And, you know, it's almost like they feel they're the big part of the show, not what's going on out in the pitch. I find it strange. I find it hard to understand. But I do think, and we've seen it with Pyro and all this stuff, it just causes a constant problem for the clubs who are you know, pandering to it in many ways.
You'll have seen there at the bottom of your screen, I've been putting up some comments from everyone watching. If you want to get involved in the conversation, please hit us with your comment. I'll bring you in a wee second, Ross, but let me read a few of these out. Michael says, imagine putting something like that out in public when you're trying to get people to buy and invest in the club. Roy says, so instead of producing something classy for VAD, they come up with that and still don't win. Embarrassing. However, there's a lot of people, particularly in the live comments, that are actually defending the tifo. Rangers Easy OK says, the tifo was fine. The old Bill have said there's no case to answer. The bottle throwing is disgraceful and will be dealt with. Patrick Stewart needs to learn to keep his mouth shut. He is losing. This one as well. There was hee-haw wrong with the tifo. Any idiots throw missiles onto the pitch should be banned for life. And just very finally, Andy Finnegan says, I'm not that bothered with this. I'm sure there will be an equally upsetting tifo at the next match at Celtic Park. It's all part of the bitter rivalry. See, as Keith said there, Ross, see when that was unfurled yesterday, just watching it on the telly, I didn't realise it was Souness, and I was kind of taken aback. I was like, bloody hell, that's a bit full on. And so I'm not pretending to be like any full outrage or anything. I just thought it was a wee bit, just a bit intense.
Yeah, it's one of those where you kind of, if you don't get it from looking at it, it hasn't really worked.
Aye, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, somebody's saying there looked like one of Harry Enfield's Scousers, which I thought was quite good.
But, I think that's what they were based on Souness.
What I don't really understand is how something that size, I mean, it's the size of the Copeland Road end. How does that get in without, clearly Rangers know it's coming in. They don't know what it is. Because to then come out with a statement, I can understand why they did it. Listen, Patrick Stewart's priority is getting this takeover done, making sure Rangers come across in the best light before that is done. They don't want anything to jeopardise that. There was a wee bit of a similar situation. It was Hibs Rangers a few years ago when Ron Gordon was about to buy, and he was at the game, and it was when the guy came over the advertising board to have a go at James Tavernier. Hibs had a statement out within minutes of full time. Leanne Dempster was down at the post-match press conference briefing, like, they're taking this extremely seriously. Now, I'm not saying a tifo is on the same level as somebody coming on the pitch. At the end of the day, it's just a banner. Graham Souness hasn't actually, he wasn't standing shooting people. But, that
would be a story.
That would have done traffic. But yeah, it's just not a great look.
No,
it's not a great look. And as Keith said, it seems to be with the ultras groups. No matter what's happening on the pitch, it's look at us. This is about us. We're the main attraction here. What can we do to get the most attention that we can? And they seem to be. It's not even. I don't even think they're outdoing each other. They're just trying to raise the bar for themselves or lower the bar, depending on your perspective. But yeah, it seems to be a very extreme attention seeking. Albeit it was just a banner, but yeah, optics were not great.
Aye, I mean, comments coming in is thick and fast. As Ross says about the size, Keith, Rangers is OK says, Keith, problem with the Rangers coming out and saying tifo is unacceptable. I find it hard to believe the club weren't aware of what was going on given the size. You can't have your cake and eat it. I think that is a good point that Ross and Rangers is OK, mate, because it was absolutely massive. I mean, there's no way they could have got that in there without the club knowing.
Well, they would obviously know that something was going to be unveiled, but you would think with supporters liaisons and all that you would need to have it vetted a little bit, or at least ask guys, what is it you're sticking up? Like, all right, Graham Souness pointing a shotgun at Celtic, and I don't know if that's a good idea, boys. This time, maybe.
I thought.
Like, do you know what? I'll give it one thing. It was impressive in terms of visually, but it sends out not a great message at all, does it? For a fixture which has got, its issues around the city centre and beyond on match days. I get it, as I said, because it's an iconic photograph. If you understand that, you kind of see it for what it is. If you don't, if you've got no idea what that photograph is or who it is, then straight away you're looking at it going, oh my God, what is this message? So once again, Rangers are dealing with it. But you know what? From what I've seen today, the Union Bears seem perfectly happy with the reaction it's caused, and that's pretty much the aim, isn't it? It's to cause shock, offence, whatever it is. Right. I think right now Rangers have got a whole lot more to concentrate on, and the fans, and as Ross is saying there, this element of look at us, look at this. Look what we're doing. Look how offensive we can be. This is that time when the club's at a real crossroads, and there's probably more important things for people to be focusing on in there right now.
Yeah. Green Machine says, "Can we get back to the game rather than all this guff?" Which I think is a fair point. We talked a little bit yesterday about Cyriel Dessers and his future. 47 goals now in 2 seasons for Rangers. I think before we dive back into that a little bit, we can hear a little bit from the Rangers striker, and here's what he had to say.
Scoring at an old firm at Ibrox as a Rangers player is, I think, one of the best feelings you can have as a football player. So it was definitely a nice feeling.
There's going to be a lot of change at the club this year. I mean, have you had thoughts about hoping to stay here and feeling that everyone, I suppose, in the team has that doubt over their heads because there's going to be so much change in the squad, the new regime coming in?
I have no idea about what's going to happen in the summer. Not in owners, not in the players. I don't know who wants to stay, who wants to leave, who needs to be sold. I don't know. I have no idea. So I cannot answer that.
But does it feel like everyone has a question mark over them heading into the summer because of the changes that we're going to make?
I think that's not only in our situation. I think that's in every club in Europe nowadays. So I'm not really.
Do you still want to be Arab was coming next up?
Yeah, definitely. No, I signed here with a clear intention. I said that last week at the press conference as well. I want to win trophies with Rangers, stay here for a few years, build on something. So that's my intention. If there is a decision to be made, he knows the club in and out. He knows the fans. He knows the DNA. He has the DNA of the club inside it. If I look at his speech before the game, you feel the Rangers DNA, and he can transfer that to the group as well. So I think that's a big positive point for him.
What was that speech like? Was he quite passionate before the game today?
Yeah, he always is, but on a day like today, a little bit extra. Yeah. 2 years ago, the day I signed, you would tell the fans, this striker is going to score, 47 goals in 2 seasons. I think everybody would have said, oh, yes, please. And I didn't until now. Could have been more, probably yes. Could have been less, probably yes. So I'm just trying to do my job, and it hurt me a lot in the beginning, but now I kind of moved past that. And I'm just focusing on myself, helping my teammates out, helping the team out. But I think if you put it that way, I think in a team with a lot of ups and downs to score 25 goals, I think that's a good achievement, and I'm proud of that. Yeah, there was a point where I wish I could turn it around, but if I see, for example, the criticism somebody like Tav sometimes gets with the things he achieved at this club, then I think it's always going to be there, and which is okay. It's part of being at a big club like Rangers, and you can feel the hurt in the fans, and they always want more and better, but that's also what we want as players, and I know it's not always easy, but we all want to go in the same direction together with the fans.
Plenty of comments coming in on Cyriel Dessers, guys. Let me throw a few of these at you as well. Jake says, I don't know why he gets the abuse he gets from Rangers fans. The man knows where the net is. He's not a bad player. Jack, though, says, it's a good return from Dessers, but you really want your striker to score when it matters, as he did last season. A couple as well. I thought this was a good point.
Scoring the opening goal in an Old Firm game is pretty important. It's a pretty big goal. Although, granted, the context around the game is, the league's already gone.
Green Machine makes this point, Ross. He says, if Rangers were winning trophies, would Dessers get treated with respect? I think it's a fair point. If he scores 25 goals and they win a double or something, it puts a very different, slant on his season.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not just Cyriel Dessers' fault that Rangers haven't been winning trophies. He's missed big chances and big moments, but you look at his numbers are good. And you're talking about, do you keep him this summer? Maybe twist it around. Do you sell your top scorer and gamble that you're going to get somebody better for similar or less money? It's a big one.
It's a fair point, right?
Strikers that take most of the chances they get are a lot more expensive than Cyriel Dessers is. His return is not bad. Yeah, I've seen him have some shocking games. I've seen him have some really good games as well. He's got a lot of the attributes you want. He's big, he's strong. He seems to be a good character as well. He seems pretty level-headed. He doesn't get like a lot of players would have buckled under that. He can say some weeks he maybe has, but on the most part, he is producing goals. That Rangers problems, they're wider than just the chances Cyriel Dessers misses.
Aye, I think Ross makes a good point, Keith. You're signing another striker. Zero guarantee he's going to get 20, 25 goals. We talked about this yesterday as well. Singing the Blues says Dessers is a better player than Ida. What do you think of that, Keith? If you had to have one, putting you in the spot.
Listen, see if you could combine the two. If you could give Ida Dessers' work rate and desire, then you'd probably end up with a top-notch striker. But this is the quandary with Scottish football, isn't it? As Ross quite rightly points out there, Scottish clubs can't afford to finish the article. So there's going to be something missing. Unfortunately for Cyriel Dessers, it's a kind of key component, which is taking, more chances than he misses. Listen, he's right in what he says. 47 goals over 2 seasons is a very healthy contribution. And he, despite the many criticisms there are and the many chances that are missed over the course, you can't say that he hasn't weighed in. He hasn't played his part in trying. It's not Cyriel Dessers' fault that he'll probably finish, what are we saying, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chances? That's not his fault, because some of the goals that he takes, like the one that he scored against Celtic, as I said, the control to take in the pass from Diamandi, to see that Czerny was going to step over it, to anticipate that, to then have the first touch, second touch, third touch, were all top notch to set himself up for the finish. That's great striking play.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's capable of these moments, and we've seen it over and over, but he is capable then in the second half. He's a fresh air swipe when he's got possibly an even better chance, and that's the sort of conundrum that you've got with Cyriel Dessers. But I've said consistently on this show, and you can see it there, he's such a nice guy that there's a big part of you just would like him to do well, because he's a nice big fella. And he clearly, his desire, his work rate, all those attributes, and it's clearly impressed the current coaching staff, because it's hard to think when they haven't put him out as the main striker, because of all the good parts of his game, the work rate, his ability to lead a line, his discipline, which Hamza Egerman doesn't quite have these characteristics yet. He might grow into them. But Dessers is trusted to lead the line. And as I said last night, I don't know what you're going to get in the open market for Cyriel Dessers. He's not getting any younger, but he is contributing. So to me, he seems like a guy you would want to have around. And his goal record would back that up. He's not Rangers' biggest problem, although often it does appear that way.
Well, away from the football pitch again, it was Player of the Year awards last night, guys. Dyson Maeda, Players Player of the Year. John McGlynn retained his Manager of the Year award. And of course, Lennon Miller, Young Player of the Year. Keith, I know you were keen on seeing Brendan Rodgers, the Manager of the Year.
Yeah.
But happy with the rest?
Well, I think Brendan Rodgers must be looking at going, he's come up to Celtic. I am fairly confident that in 3 weeks' time, he'll have celebrated a 5th trophy out of 6 over the course of those 2 seasons. And John McGlynn's done him twice. And that's the thanks you get if you're Brendan Rodgers, because Brendan employed John McGinn for a couple of years. They worked together. John McGlynn was like chief scout for him in terms of watching the opposition. And John McGlynn credits that period of working closely beside Brendan Rodgers, being in and around the Celtic training ground, watching the way things were done and the style of play. He credits all of that with how things have gone for him since he's got back into management. He left that position to go to Wraith Rovers, was really impressive there, and then has taken on the Falkirk job, and then he's basically arrived at where fate was waiting to give him a cuddle, really, at Falkirk. This is incredible what he's doing. And to put Brendan Rodgers twice, look, John McGlynn's not going to be embarrassed by that. Of course he's not. But I think if you were having a reasonable conversation, he would probably accept that Brendan Rodgers right now is the outstanding manager anywhere in the country, which is why he'll probably end up with 5 out of the 6 trophies that have been available for him to win since his return.
John McGlynn is the perfect segue into our big Hearts chat with the one and only Ross Pilcher, because John McGlynn is one of the names that is being linked with Hearts, Ross. But the news today was that Derek McInnes is reportedly the front runner to replace Neil Critchley at Tynecastle. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe John McGlynn was discussed. My information, it's not going to be him, which doesn't come as a huge surprise. Done a great job at Falkirk, but you forget he's kind of been there, done it with Hearts. He's gone away out the game, kind of went away work under Brendan Rodgers and kind of transformed himself a wee bit, and he's on a good thing at Falkirk. And does he want the hassle and difficulty that comes with managing Hearts at 63. You know, a couple of managers have been in there, done it. Even when you're winning, you sometimes don't get much thanks for it. So, yeah, not a surprise that Hearts have been gone for him. And I think he'd be well staying where he is. He's got a free hit next season with Falkirk, and actually he's got a job there for as long as he wants it. He's done great. In terms of who Hearts will go for, I think Derek McInnes ticks a lot of the boxes they'd like in general. I think he's been at a club at a similar stature. He knows what's expected. He knows how to get them to a kind of consistent baseline of performance that's going to what fans will expect, what his bosses will expect. You saw it with Aberdeen, regular top 2-3 finishes, going deep in cup competitions, qualifying for Europe. That's a stage Hearts to get to in the short term to medium term, because this season will be nowhere near that. As to whether he'll get the job, I think he ticks a lot of boxes in general, but that's not to say that once Hearts run them through the Jamestown analytics process, there's things he'll score highly on, there's things other guys will score higher than him on, and then it's going to come down to, well, who's looking at that, who's making the decision, and what do they value? And that might be Derek McInnes, it might be somebody else. Stephen Robinson's been mentioned. I know that Hearts are leaning towards somebody with experience of Scottish football, and those two would be the two obvious ones that from what I know, they've not ruled out looking elsewhere. There will be a few names that they'll kind of run through the process, and then they'll use that to inform their decision. Whether he's the front runner, I think he's definitely high up in the conversation. I wouldn't necessarily be putting money on him getting the job right now. But as I said on the show the other week, it would seem to make a lot of sense. And it does, if it was going to be between him and Stephen Robinson, I think Derek McInnes' CV and his experience and his body of work would give him the edge. But whether that is what's going to be the deciding factor in the end, we shall see. I wouldn't put the house on it, but I wouldn't be shocked if they came to that conclusion.
Marzuno says Keith McInnes has already shown what he can do with a similar budget and club size. And a couple of other comments coming in. This one from Ian. If Hearts do employ a manager from within Scotland, he is an absolute no-brainer. What he did on a consistent basis with Aberdeen over years with consistent results, top 3 finishes. And Alex says, I'm an Aberdeen fan and I wouldn't like this to happen because I think he would do a great job. It almost feels too obvious, if you know what I mean.
That's the problem in this day and age. That, you know, somebody somewhere wants to look smarter than everybody else, whether it's an algorithm or a supercomputer. There are certain things that are so obvious, you don't need to be blinded by the science to reach the conclusion. Jackotown Analytics said some time ago, that identified some time ago that Derek McInnes was the ideal fit for Hearts. And he is. And it's for all the reasons that all the guys are saying there. He's been there, he's done it, he's completely dependable, he understands Scottish football inside and out. He's exactly the right man for Hearts. But I'm like Ross, even though all the obvious evidence right in front of your eyes draws one conclusion, you wonder what the algorithms and the boffins make of it all. Because, you know, I do think in life in general these days, sometimes we're creating positions now where people have to justify their own existence. And I worry that Jamestown Analytics, although it's worked brilliantly at Brighton, I worry that it's going to make Hearts try to go down a kind of less travelled road here than the obvious. And you know what happens if you leave Edinburgh and you want to get to Glasgow, you get in the M8. It might take a while, but you'll get there probably quicker than going all around the houses. And I worry that Hearts might have this fanciful idea of going round the houses, coming up with something that nobody else would have thought of. See, 10 times, 9 times, 99 times out of 100, if the solution you've come up with is one that nobody else would have thought of, it's because everybody else knows better. And that would be the worry. I think Derek McInnes, listen, Stephen Robinson is doing an exceptional job at St Mirren as well. And you cannot deny that. For him to be, you know, consistently taking St Mirren into the top 6 means he's punching way above their weight. And that's a brilliant job. And of course, he should be coming into the reckoning. No issue whatsoever with that. Yeah. But for me, if you're looking, Stephen Robinson hasn't got to that level of club yet. And Derek McInnes can point to his back catalogue of how many consistent seasons did he churn out over the course of Aberdeen. That's the thing that no kind of analytical, data-driven process can dissuade you or move you away from the fact that here's a guy who's been there and done it. This is tried and tested. Why would you not want that? But
Hearts kind of have gone round the houses a bit before in the past. They tried Ian Cathro, didn't work. They tried Daniel Stendhal, didn't work. They tried Neil Critchley, didn't work. The one guy that has kind of done it in the last 10 years has been Robbie Nielsen, who was, again, a fairly obvious choice. I think the best example to probably look at is Union St Galway, who also use Jamestown and Tony Bloom is involved in. They're kind of they're obviously much further on the process than Hearts in terms of what they're doing. They're challenging for Belgian titles. When they first kind of started working with Jamestown, the first few managers, it was guys who'd been there and done it in those Belgian leagues. They were familiar. There's obvious choices on paper, and that's not to say Jamestown isn't going to work in future for Hearts. That it might I think more on the recruitment side for players. I think that's going to be more beneficial in terms of managers. There's too many intangibles with managers.
I completely agree.
Once Hearts get to a certain level, then they can maybe start looking at, is there something outside the box that can take us beyond this? But they're not even anywhere near where they need to be just now. So you focus on who can get you there first, and then see where you are.
I completely agree. I think that's a really important point. That I think the analytics are really good for identifying players that you want to fit in a specific system. What they will produce, or what they're capable of producing consistently on the pitch. These, the data backs all that up. But I think managers is a different ball game altogether. Picking a manager, I don't think that should be driven by data or computer programs. I think that requires a different eye, and sometimes it is being prepared to say, well, this one is the obvious answer. Now, the interesting thing for Hearts, where Derek McInnes is concerned, I actually don't know about you, Ross, right? But here's my theory. I think Hearts were taking a bit of a punt at the weekend when they put Liam Fox in charge for Ross County. I think they were panicked into making a decision. It was a knee-jerk thing. It surprised me that they, having made that decision on Saturday, I thought they were sort of almost obligated or duty bound to produce a manager, the next manager, by the Monday or Tuesday. And I felt that maybe there was something in the pipeline there, but now I don't think that's the case at all. I just think it was a panic, knee-jerk reaction. And I think the worry would have been ahead of going to Ross County at the weekend. If they'd lost that, I think they would have been spooked into making, a more permanent appointment immediately to try and get them over the line and out of danger this season. They now don't have to do that. The pressure come off because of the win at Ross County. It does buy them a bit of breathing space. Yeah. And if they had gone for Derek McInnes, just say Liam Fox went up the road and Hearts had beaten again, and they were now in serious peril. How do you get Derek McInnes out of Kilmarnock? How do you persuade Billy Bowie to do that, to allow that to happen? Yeah, well, especially given that Kilmarnock and Hearts, I think, playing the last weekend of the top 12 season. So I think that would have been nigh on impossible to get that deal done. It might be a lot easier to talk Billy Bowie into doing some sort of deal over the course of the summer. But again, like Ross, I'll be interested to see. I don't think it's as clear cut as is being made out. I think there's definitely an interest. I think if Derek McInnes was offered it, he'd find it impossible to turn down. But the devil will be in the detail or in the data when it comes down to where Hearts choose to go next.
Also, you mentioned Derek McInnes isn't going to come cheap either.
No.
Aye, very good point.
Was Neil Critchley a cheap option?
He was the cheaper option of the two they had, I think.
Right. Okay, so that's got to get factored in to the programme as well. Possibly.
I think they're maybe now in a position where, because they got that one so long, they maybe realise, right, if we want this is the guy we really want, go out and make it happen. Listen, I'm not saying Hearts can't afford Derek McInnes. I just don't think it should be dismissed as Hearts because they're looking local, they're looking cheap.
Aye.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And you both mentioned there that Hearts did a win at the weekend. Here's how the bottom six table looks now. They are obviously up to just behind Motherwell, actually. I didn't realise they were that far up. But they are.
Motherwell found a way of getting past Celtic to go up to first place. Daniel, how did that?
They are doing well, aye. They're doing very well indeed. But I mean, they are pretty much safe. Well, they are. I think, is that mathematically safe? Not quite. Another point would do it.
Yeah, they're safe.
They're going to stay up, Hearts, aren't they?
Yeah.
No,
all they needed was that 1-1, and then it's flip-flop time. That's what they needed. My concern for Hearts going into the post-split fixtures was I felt Dundee were always going to go to Tynecastle and win that game. And I thought that would then trigger a really difficult set of circumstances, and it did. And it's resulted in manager losing his job, Liam Fox coming in. And I think what he did do, Ross, at the weekend was make it a bit more back to basics. Good idea, play Lon Shankland as a striker, for example. And they've got the win that he needed to get them. They just needed 1-1. They've got it, and they can relax now, and they can take a bit of time in terms of deciding what the best way forward is. It's not something they need to do this week.
No.
I wouldn't ask you, Ross, to be a spokesman for the Hearts support or whatever. But what's your gut feeling? Do you think he would be a welcome appointment within the Hearts support?
I think so. Yeah. Listen, there's always going to be people are going to have problems with anyone. You eventually point out in terms of minimising risk. I think the Jamestown thing kind of complicates it a bit in terms of fans' expectations are that, it's going to be somebody we've never heard of. He's going to come in, he's going to do it so differently, and we're going to shoot up the table. We're going to play this way. We're going to do all this. I don't think that's realistic. I think there's also a big misunderstanding about what Jamestown actually. That Jamestown's it's a tool for Hearts to use to inform their decisions. And listen, with these things, it depends on the criteria you're looking at. What you can put in, and you're probably going to know the sort of results you're going to get, and base it on that. It's not kind of tombola names that they go, didn't know what he is. Let's get him in. I think on the whole, most Hearts fans would see the sense in somebody like Derek McInnes. Not saying it has to be Derek McInnes, but that sort of profile. I think that's where the analytics can be helpful. If you decide on a profile you want, and then if you're swithering guys, you maybe run them through it, and depending on what you value, where they score highly, that can maybe help you pick between them. What was weird about the last one is they went from Per Hogmo, who was an experienced former Norway manager, to Neil Critchley, who had a couple of uninspiring spells in the English Championship and a former Liverpool youth coach. Those guys weren't the same profile, and to go from one to the other, it didn't really seem to make sense. Whereas this time they seem to have a profile in mind, somebody who's got this in his CV. Let's look at what we get, run them through it, and then that should help us make a decision. Can we afford them? Is he going to take it? And then maybe go for there. But overall, I think most Hearts fans would see Derek McInnes as a solid choice and get them back to where they expect to be. If not way beyond that, I don't think that's realistic. But in terms of being third place, qualifying for Europe, realistic chance of winning cups, I think Derek McInnes ticks all those boxes, and I think fans realise that.
Friend of the show, Keith, Gianni's been in touch, right?
Oh, yeah.
He says,
we got a sponsorship offer.
Sadly, no. He says, Gary Locke's told me it's a shoe-in for McInnes. And if that was all Gianni had said, that would be fine. But he's also said this: Daniel's the cheap option as host, as Des Clark is too busy for the show. So I've got some exclusive news in the hotline. Gianni has just been blocked. And that comment has been deleted.
Oh, that'll be bad for Gianni's mental health. He's feeling very dependent on this show.
Censorship on the Daily Record. I don't know what's coming to.
Listen, if he wants to get back in touch with those pizzas that he's promised us, that's great. If not, it's cold out there, Gianni, in Blockland. I think that brings us to the end of today's show, guys. The Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you very much to everyone that sent in comments, except Gianni. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. We hope you can join us then. Ross, thanks so much.
Cheers, lads. No problem.
And
Cheers,
Keith,
Ross.
it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Dan. Night,
Thanks
everyone.
for watching. Good night.